Love lives here.
So here at Centers for Spiritual Living Worldwide for this year, we have been working with the theme of 2020 Spiritual Vision. And this month, we are working with the theme of celebrating divine truth. And today, we are taking a pause here, and we are using the song that you just heard as a basis for our discussion, as a basis for our spiritual practice this morning. I first heard that song, probably back in 2009. Yeah, Ed's shaking his head, yes. Back in 2009, when I first started attending Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Las Vegas. And just the way it starts off with, just the a cappella and just the spaciousness of it and just how the piano just lightly comes in. It is something that touched me, touched the depths of my soul right away. And I was hearing, wow, there is such spiritual truth in this. There is such spiritual power in this, just to listen to it. And so it starts off with, in the silence, there is peace. In the silence, there is peace. And what we know is that this peace is the peace that passes all understanding. That is the peace that Jack Fowler is writing about. It is the peace that passes all understanding. It is not my peace. It is my peace, not the peace that the world gives. It is my peace, meaning the spirit peace. It is the peace of spirit, the peace of the divine that is found in the silence. It is an eternal and everlasting peace that rests, the peace that comes over us when we open and allow it, when we don't turn to the peace of the world, when we're not looking for peace in the world, when we're not looking for peace as people or man or mankind or humankind could give us, possibly, as peace being the limited version of that there is no war, that there is no strife, that we would be looking to governments or institutions to provide us respite from conflict. It is not that peace, because that peace is temporal. That peace passes, because that peace is dependent on human beings behaving. That peace is dependent on human beings getting along, trying to get along, and putting all of their little egos aside. And we know with what we see out in the world that is really difficult for us to do. I don't know about you, but Costco this time of year is not a peaceful place for me, right? It's just not, right? And so there is the hubbub, and there is the rush and the movement, and there is distraction. And so the peace that we're talking about here in the silence of that song, the peace that's ever available to us is in the silence, is the peace of the one. The peace that passes all understanding, the peace that transcends all, is all, through all. It is that stillness, it is that silence from which sound, from which life emerges. It is that still point, that center of creation. It is that peace. And so we allow the peace to wash over us as we sit in the silence and listen. And Jack Fowler goes on to say, in the silence, there is unspoken joy. There's unspoken joy. It is that unspeakable joy of spirit. It is that bliss, if you will. It is that holy union, that holy communion, that holy conscious union with the one. And when we enter into that in the silence, when we enter into that, there is no word that could come. There are no words that could come that could even begin to describe that level of peace, that level of joy, that level of freedom, that level of absolute bliss. It is what is called a numinous experience, a divine experience. where our inner light just begins to radiate and shine, and a slight smile comes to our lips. It is that joy that we have with an internal hallelujah. Is that joy, that peace. And he goes further and says, and there's a release from the world full of chaos and noise. There's a release from the world of chaos and noise, and in that there is freedom. There is freedom that we are no longer distracted by the things of appearance, by the things out here, that we are not distracted, that we are not tempted, that we are not called to try to pay attention to this, to believe in two rather than one, that we are being released from the world full of chaos, the world full of noise, and we are freed in recognizing that there is a divine order, there is a divine power, there is a divine presence, there is a divine harmony, a divine balance that we find in the silence, that we find within ourselves. In the silence, I find God. In the silence, I find myself. It's really interesting this time of year, I think, when you think about it, or when I think about it, that this time of year, this December time, this time of coming into and going into the darkness as we approach the winter solstice, that this is a time when it is an opportunity for us to really turn within and to be introspective and to get quiet and to get still and to reflect on our lives and to reflect on our relationships and to reflect on the year, perhaps. It is a time to turn within and cozy up and be nurtured and nurture those embryonic ideas that may be wanting to come forth, the small ideas, those things that we have in the back of our head, and it's an opportunity to acknowledge that which has already been. But really, it is a quiet time. It is to be a reflective time. If we follow the flow of nature in the northern hemisphere, which is the hemisphere in which we live in, if we follow the nature of that, then this is a time of going within. This is a time of quieting. This is a time of bringing all of the juices or all of the sap of the tree back into the trunk. It's a time of releasing things that no longer serve us. It's a time of letting things go. It's a time of turning within and centering and grounding and deepening our roots further into the earth, further into our greater understanding of the divine. It's a time to turn within. And yet in our world, the way we've created it now, it's a time of being busy. It is a time of artificial light. It is a time of running helter and skelter. It's a time of this chaos, really, and noise and stimulus, and a time that we are frequently called and asked to, when we look out in the world, to focus on the material, focus on what can I give, what can I get, to focus on external things, external traditions. It's the way that our society is kind of moved. And so there is this weird paradox that is kind of happening within us, that this is supposed to be a time of joy, that this is supposed to be a time of love, that this is supposed to be a time of quietude. And yet at the same time, there is this outward external focus that we have that is noisy and distracting, which is in direct competition with what we're being asked to do, which is being asked to be silent, being asked to be quiet, being asked to go into the stillness, into the silence. And so that stirs up this chaotic energy because we're at loggerheads with ourselves. We're going against our very nature. We're going against the very cycle. We're going against the very rhythm of life itself. So this year, what if we do it a little bit differently? This year has been a different year all the way around, hasn't it? It really has. From March on, it has been a completely different world. The holidays that we've experienced, the life events that we've experienced have been very different than what they have been in the past. And so once again, we are looking at something very different, perhaps, than what we've experienced in the past. We are invited, and we've been invited. That has been the gift of this year. We have been invited, and we are continuing to be invited to let go of those things that no longer serve, to release our old ways of thinking, to free ourselves from our limitation, to free ourselves from the old belief systems that we've held that have brought us to where we are. We have the opportunity to release them and let them go. And it is in the clinging to the old, it is wanting to go back to the way things were. It is in that clinging that we are experiencing suffering, that we are experiencing pain, that we are experiencing discontent, that we are experiencing this mental disconnect, if you will. Because we are trying to live in the past, and so we are not really experiencing the present, and we are trying to project into the future, and so we're not experiencing the present. We are hoping that the past becomes the future, and that's not possible. So this year, what if we really honored the season? Because the season is the reason for the season. What if we really honored what is being asked of us, what we are being invited to? The caterpillar, when it goes into its cocoon, completely turns to goo, right? Before it emerges as the butterfly. But at no point is the caterpillar in the cocoon thinking, oh, I wish I were back to being a caterpillar. Oh, I long for the traditions of being a caterpillar, of munching on leaves in the summertime with my friends, right? Of gathering and just hanging out and, climbing up the stalks and climbing up the stems of plants. It's not longing for what was. It's fully present in the moment, allowing itself to be transformed, allowing its life to be transcended, allowing itself to be transmuted into something even greater. This year has been an opportunity for us to do that, and it continues to be so. In case you aren't aware, Southern California, we are now back as of 11:59 this evening. We are now back under what is now the regional stay-at-home order, which is very similar to the order that was initially issued back in March. So I invite you to go and check out California, go and check the COVID site for california.gov to learn more details. However, we have gone back, or actually we've moved forward into another time of sheltering in grace. So this year, I really invite us, as we are sheltering in grace, to take advantage of this time. We've been given this time, even more so now, in the height of our holiday season, to really turn within, to go within, to listen to the spirit within, to listen to the still small voice. It's hard to hear the still small voice when we're distracted by everything that's going on out here. We're being invited once again to really turn and listen. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen to the silence. Allow the still small voice within to emerge, to speak, to impart its wisdom, to impart its love, to impart its guidance. What we are being called to do, what we're being asked to do, is we're being asked to surrender. And I know for some people that is a hard word, but we are being asked to surrender. We're being asked to allow. We're being asked to trust. We are being asked to have faith. What is it that we have our faith in? Do we have faith in the world of effect, or do we have the faith of God? And the way that we come to realize what it is and recognize it is by turning it within, by listening. So a couple of weeks ago, I shared with you a practice of looking up, a practice of looking up, right? To see rightly, to see justly, to see above the world of effect, and to see as Spirit sees, to see the oneness, to see the wholeness, to see the allness and the fullness of the divine. And in so doing, we create a vacuum and we open out a way through which Spirit moves into the world and we change the world. Today, we're going to do another practice, and this is a practice of listening. So I invite you, if you choose, to lift your eyes and keep them open. And then let's open your ears. Let's open our ears. And so wherever you're sitting in this moment, with your eyes slightly up, perhaps, or if you prefer, go ahead and close your eyes, whichever is more comfortable for you. What I invite you to do is I invite you to begin to listen to the room around you. Just take note of the bird outside, Oliver shaking his head, the lawnmower outside, perhaps, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the sound of your beloved shifting on the sofa. Just notice the sounds. Don't try and block them out. Just become aware of them. And now begin to shift your awareness to the silence beneath the sound, the silence behind it. Listen for the quietude, the stillness. Listen. In the silence, there's peace, unspoken joy, freedom. And now listen for the still small voice within you. What word or phrase or message does it have for you this day? In the silence, we find God. In the silence, we find ourselves. And so as you move through this December and the remainder of the year, stop, look up, and listen. And so it is. And so let's come together in consciousness. I recognize here and now that there is only one power, one presence, one life, one love, one infinite, eternal. And this one is the word that emerges from the silence within itself, that brings forth all of creation, all of life. It is the one word spoken that speaks me, that lives me, that expresses in, through, and as me, in, through, and as my life. I live, move, breathe, and have my being in it. I too emerge from the silence. It is in the silence that I recognize my oneness with wisdom, with peace, with joy, with harmony, with the power, the divine power that is all power. And as I know that this is true of myself, I know that this is true of everyone present here this day. I know that this is true of all of life, of all of creation. Each one is one. The one breath, the one life, alive, at peace, in joy, in freedom. And so I speak my word here for this beloved community, that as we move into the month of December, as we move into this quiet time, that we take the time to release those things that no longer serve. We take the time to set aside the busyness of the year, set aside the busyness of the time, that knowing that it is incompatible with what we are being called to do, what we are being called to be, which is silent, which is available. And so we release the busyness of the world. We release the busyness of life as we know it here in this realm. And we open to the greater life, the one life, the all life. And we allow ourselves to be guided by it. We open up and create the space, the spaciousness through which spirit moves into the world of form, through which spirit moves into life itself, through which spirit heals, reveals, loves, expresses. We do this now. And we are divinely guided throughout the entire process because we have listened. We open ourselves, we open our inner ear, and we hear the wisdom of the one, knowing that we are divinely guided, knowing that we are divinely guarded, knowing that we are divinely directed. We can never make any mistake. For all is whole, all is perfect, and we simply allow ourselves to walk, to do the work of the one, to allow the one to do the work, its work through us. So we surrender, we open, we listen. We see rightly, we hear justly. And so I give thanks for this time together. I give thanks for this knowing. I give thanks for the openness of this community. I give thanks for the love of this community as it continues to wash over the region, as it continues to wash over Riverside, as it continues to wash over all of the lives that it touches. Give thanks for the beauty and the perfection that comes from within the silence. And we wait. We wait in service to the one. That I release this word, knowing it is fulfilled, and so it is.
Love